Hi guys. I just want to go live on Instagram quickly. Hello, happy Wednesday. Claudia's sitting over here. She's not behind, but they can hear you. She's not behind the camera today because we are grown up. We figured out to do this without her standing behind the camera. Happy Wednesday. It is the last day of January, the longest year of our lives. Let me just put the mic here, then I don't have to hold it. I hope you guys have had a good January. Tomorrow is February. Apparently it is Love Bomb Month. Everyone's excited for relationships and for gifts, which still confuses me. But that also brings me to my topic. This evening I am talking about the grandiose narcissist. I don't know if any of you even know what this term means. There are different terms for them, but I prefer to use this one because it defines them better, in my opinion. So grandiosity is essentially someone who's very extroverted, very out there. I nearly mentioned someone that I know is grandiose, but too many people know him. And he's not a narcissist, but he's very outwardly spoken, very extroverted in the way where he knows how to grab people's attention, but he's also very empathetic, which makes him not narcissistic. But a grandiose narcissist is probably someone you've come across many times in your life. For the most part, as far as I can tell, that many people don't hang around them for very long because they are very obvious. They have a tendency to be in rooms and draw attention to themselves all of the time. And when someone else steps in to enter into the conversation, they either low-key insult the person or outwardly insult the person in front of everybody so that they can grab the attention back onto themselves. They don't think twice about whether they're embarrassing themselves or not, or they try to grab the conversation back from the person. I'm thinking about it in visual terms, but I hope how I'm explaining it makes sense. You guys just need to let me know if the noise outside is a lot. Cape Town has a lot of wind, y'all. A lot of wind. So you would see them in rooms where they are usually just drawing crowds to them because they are telling stories, right? They're very good at telling stories. Most of the stories aren't true. A lot of the stories surround how great they are, things they've done. They're not necessarily telling you epic stories about something that happened, but it's more to do with them being at the center of that story. The exaggerations can actually go pretty far, so they can actually make up entire stories about how great and phenomenal they are at particular things. And for the most part, those things that they're exaggerating are things that they actually do not do well. They recognize. This is, I think, the only time that the only way that narcissists recognize that they fall short in some areas is when they are trying to make what it is they seem big, make what it is they do seem bigger than it actually is, because they need people not to see that they have a deficiency, right? Most narcissistic people, not most, all of them don't know how to be empathetic. So in scenarios where someone is really ill, like I said the other day, or when someone dies, they don't even know how to hold space for the people in the situation, right? So when people are ill, they cannot be emotionally available for it, but they will draw attention to themselves based on that illness. So in the case where I said the other night about children who are neglected by narcissistic parents, what narcissistic parents can actually do, and grandiose narcissistic parents, is take all the attention off of the sick child and make it about them. They're very good at doing that. I've actually seen in multiple occasions that some of these people make funerals about them. They have directed all of the attention off of the mourning family and the person that has passed on, and then turned all of the attention onto them and how good they are and how supportive they are and how much they're willing to help and all of that. And they don't hold space for the environment, and usually don't necessarily understand the situation in the room because they don't understand how empathy even works, right? The ways that you can recognize a grandiose narcissist is a few ways. So most narcissists' main focus is trying to find external validation. So what they want, essentially, especially grandiose narcissists, is people outside of them to praise them for the things that they're doing or the things that they've done or how successful they are, how much money they have. They're always looking for external validation. So the chances are they're always buying the nicest thing, the most expensive thing. even if they can't afford it, they are buying the nicest thing, the most expensive thing, the most grandiose thing, the thing that's going to get them the most attention, so that the people around them are constantly giving them praise for the things that they seem to be doing well, or the things that they have. So you see them cycling these things. I know some narcissists have a tendency to want to buy consistent expensive cars. So every 6 months to a year, they're buying a new BMW. And you can't even understand how they can even afford that thing, right? Because their lifestyle is so big, but the job they do doesn't necessarily make sense for the amount of money that they spend. But then they're not only just purchasing those things, they're trying to find ways to get people to recognize it, right? They go to strange places. Like, imagine you're going to an old age home or a children's home with your job, and you're wearing a full Nike outfit. They do things like that because regardless of where they're going or where they're forced to go, they have to always be the center of attention. So they're most likely the person at these work events where they have to go and do outreach programs who is talking the most and saying how wonderful they are the most. And then you come away from that thing, and then they're telling everybody how well they did and how much they gave and how much attention they paid to the people who needed it. When in reality they haven't really even done anything, but they have to keep selling it to make them look a particular way. If you notice on social media, they are more grandiose narcissists than anything else. So the people that talk more about their lifestyles and the things they did and the places they went to and the people they met. Look, all of us have certain narcissistic traits, but grandiose narcissists are the ones who go exponentially out of their way to make sure you are clapping your hands all the time for them. And even in a job, and what the thing about that is, the people who are clapping hands are the ones who are actually doing the real work and don't recognize that this person keeps drawing all of the attention away from the people who deserve it, because they feel they have insecurities in that area, and they have insecurities with how they are, how they behave. They know how they behave, so they try and shield it with this big, wonderful, in my mind, imaginary personality. Because as far as I've witnessed and some of the studies that I've done, they don't have developed personalities. So they have to create these outwardly personalities for people to love them, right? The other thing that I wanted to say is they don't only just focus on money and things, right? They are also, you can tell them, because of their arrogance. They pretend to know a lot about a lot, but they don't actually know a lot about anything. They can be pretty successful because they're chasing money and chasing status. They really love to have a title. So they will work hard to try and get a title, but they're not able to really fulfill the title and find ways to manipulate the situation to make it look like they are actually doing what it is they've set out to do. They're very good at finding people to do the job for them, while they take all the credit. And the manipulation part comes in when they're able to manipulate those people into believing that they deserve the credit. I was just talking to Claudia about the differences between a vulnerable and a grandiose narcissist. And the vulnerable narcissist is the more quiet one, which I will talk about hopefully tomorrow if this app works. But they're so calculated that they have to create scenarios in their head of how they can manipulate the people around them to ensure that they are receiving the validation that they are looking for. They cannot survive without it. I said the other day, they are like leeches, right? They have to use other people in order to feel like they exist. So at any given moment, a grandiose narcissist will swallow up all the air in the room because they need to put themselves on a pedestal regardless of what anyone else in the room thinks about them. So you can do a little bit of reading on them. There's quite a bit of reading, but one of the things I wanted to mention tonight was how to avoid or actually separate yourself from grandiose narcissists. A lot of the articles are very mild, and I think it's because we have to also consider the fact that they're human. The issue with narcissistic people, and depending on where they are on the scale, because they can be a lot worse and a lot better, and in my opinion, grandiose narcissists are so self-absorbed that they can't see when they are sabotaging themselves because they have themselves in their peripheral view and nobody else. as where vulnerable narcissists are a lot more calculated and make sure that they cover their tracks when they are engaged in behavior that is not morally accepted, or when they are being manipulative. They are very, very good at covering their tracks. So although they differ and they go up on a range, it's like autism. Autism is on a scale. In my opinion, narcissism is also on a scale. You can get really, really bad ones who are close to psychopaths, and then the others are a little milder, but the vulnerable ones hide very well. Now, the tools that are given online to either avoid them or protect yourself from them are very mild. They don't actually give you the real understanding of how to manage these people, because one of the biggest conversations we have around narcissism is building boundaries. The problem is you can't create a boundary if you don't even know what the boundary is. If you know what an empath is, so someone who's come from a traumatic past, who has a tendency to really feel other people's pain when they talk to them, and not only just hold space but actually can absorb someone else's feelings when they're going through a really hard time, that's usually an empathic person. And narcissists are drawn to empathetic people because they do not have empathy. But the other reason is because empathic or empathetic people don't have any walls up or any boundaries of protection. They allow everybody in because they see everybody as intrinsically good. And I said this the other night. So one of the most important things is building boundaries and knowing how to build them. And what I mean is knowing how to put a separation between you and the narcissistic person. And like I say time and time again, you need to learn what a narcissistic person is before you do that. But essentially, you're not supposed to have your boundaries down regardless of who you meet, because you need to get to know who people are before you allow any of those walls down. Unfortunately, empathetic people don't necessarily have those walls up because they are so open, hoping that people can come into their lives and see them. But at the same time, they're exposing everybody, including the people who don't belong there, into their lives in ways that they shouldn't be. So boundaries is a very important thing, and it's very mildly described when you look at it on the internet. But boundaries are so important, and they need to be extremely strong, especially right in the beginning. And what I mean by this is you are not communicating vulnerable details about you. So I'm going to give you an example of how I do this. So when I meet people, my initial conversation with them, because I'm very open, I'll have an open conversation with them, but I've already defined what that open communication part is. A lot of what I tell them is not vulnerable things. To them, they seem vulnerable because in their minds, people don't usually talk about this kind of thing. So, for instance, I'd meet someone, and the first conversation we're having is about deep, meaningful conversations, for instance, and then I'll talk about my thoughts about them. And to them, this is okay, no one usually talks about stuff like this. This is a very open person, and they assume that I'm being vulnerable when I'm not. My walls only come down with the people who are in my circle, and it takes time for people to come into my circle. They have to be evaluated, and it takes time to evaluate them. I think at the moment I only have 4 people in my circle. I was speaking about it yesterday, yes. I literally only have 4 people in my inner circle, and then there are people on the fringes of the circle, and then there are people who are outside the circle who think they're inside the circle because they think I'm that open with them. And it's not a form of manipulation. It's just I know that those people's conversations and the things I can tell them about myself personally, in the way that I feel and the things that I'm going through, is very limited. And it has to be, because they haven't grown emotionally enough and are not mature emotionally enough to even hold space for the weight of some of the things in my life. We need to also understand that as empaths, we are responsible for how much we put out and how much we allow people to come in. I know those people, and it's not their fault. I'm not at a level where they're able to manage certain of the things in my life, and I don't expect them to. So why would I share information with them that automatically now becomes their responsibility, and they have no way of managing it? So if they ill manage it, now I'm angry. Just don't cause yourself the stress. We need to learn to build certain layers when it comes to people. So like I was saying earlier, when I meet someone, initially my wall is up. We're having 2, 3, 4 conversations and they don't really know me. And then I have a loop that I do with them. So depending on how safe the person is in the first couple of conversations, I will throw them in the deep end. give them an emotional thing and see how they handle it. Depending on how they handle it in that conversation will depend on how close I draw them or if they stay outside of the circle. Narcissistic people and grandiose narcissistic people either shut down or turn the scenario into them. For the most part, they'll probably just not even communicate about it, or they'll turn it into a scenario about them. That's besides the fact that ADHD people have a tendency to do this as well, but some of us are self-aware enough to know that we're doing that and then talk about it in our conversation. Narcissistic people don't know how to do that because they don't have self-awareness. And then I'm explaining this a lot, so if you need to watch this again, watch it again. But what I'm saying is, narcissistic people don't have the ability to engage in your emotional disposition because they are not empathetic. Watch the reaction of the person when you throw them in the deep end. It will tell you immediately what kind of a person they are. And then the next thing you do is you criticize them about something. And I don't mean be mean or manipulative about it, but if you are a self-aware person and you are understanding that maybe there's something that this person is having an issue with in this area, you don't have to be mean about it. I have a friend that I do jokes with. I was with him yesterday and I made a joke with him about something that I noticed that bothered me a bit, but it bothered me because it made him look bad. And I brought it up in a comedic kind of way. And his response told me whether he was a safe person or had narcissistic tendencies. His response is always very safe. But other people get defensive and they become upset. And the second you start to criticize something, if you criticize something really small that is easy to change and that will benefit them and they get angry, then it's time to step away. That's how you build a boundary. The biggest mistake that empathetic people do is we don't build boundaries early enough. We allow these people in so much, and by the time we want to build the boundaries, we have pissed them off. And that's when things go really wrong. So with grandiose narcissistic people, you don't want to do that, because what they will do is go on social media. They're the ones who are going to stand with a megaphone on social media, tell everybody stories about you that aren't true, that you will hear from everyone else, because somehow they need to find a way to make what happened between you about them, when in fact they were actually harming you in whatever process was happening, right? This happens in friendships, in families, in relationships. It's not specific to one situation. Okay, I'm going very long on building boundaries. Then the other thing is, because grandiose narcissistic people are more likely to criticize you in public and openly without thinking twice about harming you, and then if you say that wasn't funny, they'll say, it was just a joke. Those people are the people we need to stay away from. Don't take their criticism personally, because the one thing that narcissistic people are coming for, and I'm going to say this all the time, is your attention. And even if they make you upset, they are getting attention. Don't take their criticism personally, because a lot of the time they are just projecting their own insecurities onto you. What they're saying is not even true, but what they see, they're trying to do is make you feel less than them. Grandiose narcissistic people are generally bullies. The children at school who are insulting and beating up other kids, you need to look into that if that's happening to your child, because generally grandiose narcissistic people are the ones who are going to bully other people. They're all bullies, but these ones are more outwardly and open about it, and they draw in other people to help support their abusive and what is the other word, like bullying behavior, right? Then the other thing is, you need to not engage in arguments with them. They love an argument. They love the attention of an argument. They will never win an argument because they can't actually have wholesome arguments that come with resolution. Like I said in my Instagram video this afternoon, they don't know how to have healthy arguments that come with a result that is beneficial to everyone. But they like to argue. That's the person who is screaming at you in the mall because something didn't happen the way that they wanted. These Karens that we're seeing all over social media are generally grandiose narcissists. If you watch how they continue to escalate things in shops and in malls, all narcissists are like that. The grandiose ones just continue and continue because the attention is a lot for them. They love that amount of attention. They want attention regardless of how it looks. I was just saying to Claudia now, those, these stories that we watch, these documentaries and the movies that we watch about these psychopaths that kill people and that are bragging about it. Like they go to jail or they go to somewhere and they talk about how they killed someone. I actually saw a video on someone on TikTok the other day. This boy was part of a gang, him and his friend, and they murdered a boy, and they buried the guy. It wasn't a boy, they buried the guy or something. They put him in a dumpster. I don't know if you saw that video. And then he took a video of himself walking away from the scene of the crime with his camera saying, yeah, we did this. Not saying exactly what he did. It took them a matter of days to arrest this guy. Because he couldn't wait to share that he had murdered somebody. Right? So watch out for these people. I don't, look, I'm still trying to understand the full psychology of the differences between them. I can recognize them myself personally. It takes a lot of education to do that. So when I'm telling you these things, I've done a lot of work, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in this area. But in my personal opinion and experience, I feel like vulnerable narcissists are much more calculated and use their intelligence more wisely than grandiose narcissists. They don't know how to think about the consequences of their actions. That's one of the reasons also why they pull in empathetic people. Empathetic people come from the kind of trauma where they're always having to watch their space, right? They're so used to walking on eggshells that they end up with people where they always have to walk on eggshells. But it also makes them really keen to be careful to watch for what might come in future. Narcissistic people don't have the ability to look into what may come next. So the consequences of their actions don't fully show up for them. And even when the consequences come to light, they are in complete denial that they have done anything wrong, which is wild, but it's so true, and it is so scary to watch happen. But yeah, that is just a few caveats. Why do you say that word? Caveats. I like that you're sitting here. I don't know how to say that word, but just a few notes on what a grandiose narcissist is. I'm going to say this in every one of my lives. I can only give so much information in these lives. But I want to get to a stage where we're talking more in detail, because there's so much more calculated details. And what I'm realizing more and more is that it takes a very long time for a normal person to come around to understanding how different narcissistic people are from other people, and how damaged they are, to the point that they cannot return to healthy, because most of us just believe that there are two sides to a story, and that some parts of what the narcissist is saying must be true. A lot of what the narcissist usually says and will give you information is based on the story that they created in their heads. And now all of us create our own version of something, right? Because we see our lives differently. We can experience the same thing and see differently. But narcissistic people have a tendency to embellish those stories, because it needs to either victimize them or make them the hero of a scenario. So the truth gets stretched so far that it's very difficult to find pieces of truth in the stories that they say. So I want to get more into that. What I was trying to say was that all of that information takes a long time for us to learn. And most people only learn it when they've gone through the experience. I'm hoping to get to a point where I'm able to help people differentiate the gap between the belief that everyone is intrinsically good and who narcissistic people are. Because there is a massive gap, and we battle to see it because we're trying to pull everybody into the you must be good situation. I know too many people, as I sit here, who are caught in narcissistic situations, who are only slowly starting to see now, after years and years and years, that they have excused that person's behavior because they have tried to fill in the gaps for the lack that they come with. And it's easy to do that. I don't blame people for being in that scenario, but it's frustrating to me personally to have conversations with people who still excuse the behavior because it's the only way that they know they can keep themselves safe. So I hope at some point I can do something where we can really talk about that a little bit more, but it's late. And I will most likely try and do a live tomorrow. Let's see if that works. But yeah, if I do a live tomorrow night, we'll talk about vulnerable narcissists, which for me are the most fascinating kind. and you'll understand why when I talk about it. But I hope that information helped you guys do a little bit more research. For everybody who comes on these lives, I just hope that you are doing your own research outside of these conversations, and that we can actually have a conversation. I invite people to DM me, and those who have my number to call me, and those who have my WhatsApp to WhatsApp me, because I'm very open to answering questions, and I like answering specific questions, because every scenario is a little bit different, and depending on where you are in your journey with your partner or your family, you may see things a little bit differently. Most people just need clarity, because these relationships and situations can be very, very confusing. And I hope that I can provide that clarity for the people who do message me. But other than that, I hope you guys have a very good Wednesday evening, and I love you so much.